Like it or not, Boruto is a story that forgets its origins at points. And while plenty of Boruto fans, myself included, would argue that that's the point, it is unfortunately inarguable that sometimes Boruto takes the hardest possible path as a story to avoid using things that they could have used from the old days of Naruto. And unfortunately, when you're trying to not make a reskin of the story that you're a sequel of, inherently it's gonna feel as though sometimes almost purposely you are avoiding using some of the characters and some of the items that were created or introduced in Naruto. See, because the idea of augmented shinobis or shinobi-wear weapons, well, isn't really a new concept. In fact, these crazy high-level weapons, but weapons like Boruto's reskinned Kusanagi blade, or jutsus like the Daikoku Ten, aren't necessarily new ideas. In fact, they're kind of just reskinnings of things that we were introduced to in Naruto. And unfortunately for Boruto, and more specifically Boruto characters, a lot of the new options they come up with aren't as good as the old options Naruto had. But what are those options, and why are they better? Well, today we're going to be answering all those questions and a whole lot more, because today we're talking Naruto items Boruto refuses to use. But before we get to talking about the good old days, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We're on to Gaara versus Sasuke. So today we're going to be paying particular attention to the weapons of Naruto's past. In particular, we're going to be paying attention to two specific sets of weapons introduced over the course of Naruto that would help Team Boruto right now in their battle against the Shinju more than anything they currently have access to. And the reason I want to pay particular attention today to the weaponry is because there's objectively really no reason these weapons aren't being used in Boruto right now, outside of the fact of Ikimoto not wanting to try to figure out how to reincorporate them into the story. And with no group of weapons is that more true than, unfortunately, with the treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths. See, it doesn't come as a surprise to any of you when I say that the world of Boruto is, well, objectively smaller than the world of Naruto.
Oh, Nick, what do you mean? The world of Boruto is separate dimensions. The Otsutsuki play a central role, and they're aliens, which expands the universe.
And you're right. On a grand conceptual scale, the Boruto world is bigger than the Naruto world. There's other planets, other universes, other dimensions, all of which that are not only accessible, but also readily shown. However, all of these other places, these non-Konoha places, while they are established to exist, rarely host any kind of important plot moments. Like, yes, we know there's an infinite universe out there, an infinite universe that the Otsutsuki control. But how much time do we spend out in the universe? Well, none. Yes, there's the Kara dimension, but how much do we really know about the Kara dimension outside of the fact that the Kara hideout is there and that at one point there was an emaciated Ten Tails nailed to the ground? Boruto as a story, though it does take place in a very large universe, happens almost exclusively within the confines of Konoha. And well, obviously the same thing could be argued for Naruto. Naruto did try to pay more attention to the other ninja villages. You know, the hidden stones, the hidden clouds, the hidden mists, and the hidden sands. Now, this is because for the majority of Naruto, these were the enemies of Konoha, and therefore where the majority of conflict was coming from. But now that Boruto is in an era of peace and collaboration, objectively Boruto has much more opportunity to explore these places than Naruto ever really did. And yet, unfortunately, it doesn't happen. And therefore, weapons and tools that are introduced as extensions of these villages are kind of unfortunately ignored by Boruto as a story, like with the treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths. 6 tools that were originally created by Hagoromo that were wielded by ninja from the Hidden Cloud. And more specifically than that, usually Kinkaku and Ginkaku, who wielded at different times some combination of 5 out of the 6 treasured tools. However, after Kinkaku and Ginkaku were reintroduced during the 4th Great Shinobi World War and were subsequently defeated, all of the treasure tools of the Sage of Six Paths fell into the possession of Konoha, or more specifically, Ten-Ten. And all of those treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths now currently sit inside of Ten-Ten's empty weapons shop. 6 legendarily powerful weapons created by the progenitor of chakra are collecting dust inside of a character's weapon shop who is so irrelevant that the child that they might have had isn't even manga canon. But honestly, out of these 6 weapons, the most egregious to be sitting on the sidelines is the Kohaku no Johei, or the Amber Purifying Pot, which is a large pot that apparently has the ability to seal anyone inside of it. But surely a pot that has the ability to seal anybody must have an insane amount of setup or some crazy rules that one needs to make sure to not break in order to seal anybody. Nope, actually the Kawaku no Johei is probably the easiest ninja tool to use in all of Naruto, as all the wielder of the Kawaku no Johei needs to do to seal literally anybody inside of it, presumably forever, is call out to somebody and have them respond. So if somebody went, "Hey Nick," and I went, "Hi," I would just be sealed forever, as the second that I respond, the pot records my voice and seals me, like the Benishago, but without all of the pomp and circumstance. And it's so incredibly powerful that not only was it used to seal Gyuki, the second strongest out of all of the tailed beasts, but Kurama, the strongest of all the tailed beasts, who makes up more than 50% of the 10 tails power, stated that the sealing of the Kawaku no Johei was so powerful that anybody sealed inside of it would not be able to break out. And that's coming from Kurama, who knew Hagoromo personally. Therefore, if anybody was going to be able to co-sign exactly how powerful the Kawaku no Johei was, it would probably be the strongest of all of the tailed beasts. And the Kawaku no Johei obviously lived up to its strong reputation when Darui used it to seal Kinkaku, who is a partial Nine Tails Jinchuriki during the 4th Great Shinobi World War. And crazily enough, this is something that a lot of people don't know, Tenten kept the Kawaku no Johei sealed inside of a scroll in case she found the opportunity to use it against Madara, something that objectively she probably could have done. So why isn't the Kawaku no Johei being used like all the time? Unfortunately, I don't have much of an answer for that, especially considering the fact that even though the Kawaku no Johei was consumed by the Geto statue in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, after it was able to pull in Gyuki in the yang half of Kurama, it spit the Kawaku no Johei out. And therefore the Kawaku no Johei does still very much exist in the Boruto universe. And thus why was it used against the likes of Jigen, Ishiki, and now Jura? I don't know. Especially considering the fact that none of them should have any prior knowledge about how it works, and there's really no reason for us to believe that it wouldn't work on them, as after all, Kurama told us that anybody sealed inside of it would not be able to get out. And while listen, yeah, maybe you can make the argument that Kurama doesn't understand how powerful these 3 people are, and therefore we can't take Kurama's words as absolute fact. But like, at least worth a try, right? Hey, done, gone, see you later. Oh no, he broke out of the Kawaku no Johei, breaking it forever. That's okay, we weren't using it anyways. But Nick, that's boring story writing. I mean, I guess. Like, obviously, I don't want to see Naruto walking into every fight with the Kawaku no Johei and just being like, "Hey, what's your name?" And they're like, "Hi, I'm Jura." "Hi, nice to meet you, Jura." And then the fight's over. But like an acknowledgement every once in a while of Konoha being like, "Oh yeah, I completely forgot we have 6 tools made by the guy who invented chakra. Maybe we try and use those once or twice." Would be kind of nice. But Nick, the Kawaku no Johei is boring. It's a plot device. Sure, whatever. Unfortunately, that same argument can't be used with the other treasure tool of the Sage of Six Paths I believe Konoha should be using. Because it's also objectively kind of crazy that nobody in Konoha is trying to use the Benisago. You know, the fan that when it's swung can generate a vast amount of any elemental release that the user wants? The fan that Tenten was able to swing just a few times before her chakra ran out, that granted her enough power that she was able to destroy one of the Edo Tensei puppet masks of Kakuzu. Yeah, that Benisago. See, there are so many people in the Boruto universe who are chakra monsters, but relatively ninjutsu inept. People like Kawaki and Himawari. And while both of them obviously have other moves that they can rely on that kind of have nothing to do with ninjutsu, like Kawaki's chakra blasts, blade hands in flight, and Himawari's tailed beast balls in taijutsu, there's really no objective reason that neither of them should at least try to use the Benisago. I mean, after all, in the hands of Tenten, it allowed for her to critically injure Kakuzu. You know, the guy that MS-wielding Kakashi had trouble against in a 1v1. The guy who fought and survived against Hashirama. Imagine what it could accomplish in the hands of somebody with the offensive capability and chakra to actually use it. I mean, after all, conversational points around the idea of Shinjutsu forming entire landscapes have popped up in Boruto when talking about Shibai. And Otsutsuki was able to transcend his physical form and continue living in a separate dimension. You know, like somebody else we know. That's somebody else being Hagoromo. And therefore, it's not crazy to assume that most, if not everything that Hagoromo either wielded or created was either a Shinjutsu or real Shinjutsu adjacent. Take, for example, his creation of all things jutsu, which allowed him to make whatever he wanted real, assuming he had the chakra. Doesn't the idea of being able to make whatever you want real sound eerily familiar? Kind of like omnipotence? I mean, Momoshiki literally went so far as to taunt Boruto, saying, have you never thought about how many times omnipotence has been used against humanity before? And thus, if Shibai was able to create torrents of wind so violent they reshaped landscapes with his wind release and terraform entire planets with his earth release, what if Hagoromo was able to accomplish the same thing through the use of his treasured tools? I mean, think about it. Ask yourself, why would the progenitor of chakra need a treasured tool that allowed for him to use elemental release? I mean, this is a man who fought against his mother in her 10 tails form for 3 months straight. Why would he need a fan that generates elemental release? I mean, surely he was able to do that himself, unless he was trying to up his usage of elemental release to a point where he could create the world that we know now in Naruto, pushing his elemental release to a Shinjutsu-esque level. And thus that tool in the hands of somebody like Himawari, a 9-tailed Jinchuriki league stronger than either Kinkaku or Ginkaku, or Kawaki could possibly see the Benisago returning to its original form of power. Now, unfortunately, as for the other 4 treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths, there's really no justifiable avenue to bring any of them back into the story. Oh, I'm stupid. I'm sorry. There's only 5 treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths, but like the 6 in the title made me think it was 6. You get it. But the 3 other treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths, and I also just realized I've been calling the Basho Sen the Benisago this entire time. It's Friday. I'm tired. I've just been messing up the treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths so many times recently. Don't worry, to those of you I've offended, I'll be releasing a Notes app apology on Twitter after this. Anyways, the other 3 treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths, Nick, you idiot, Benisago, the Kokinjo, and the Shikisaiken, really have no avenue to return. 1, because you need a duo, 2 people to use all 3 of them, and 2, because if you're not going to have all 3 of these tools used by some kind of duo, you would need a ridiculously high-level weapons user, and unfortunately, the only ridiculously high-level weapons user is, like I said earlier, sitting in a mostly abandoned weapon shop. And if she did have a child, like we touched on earlier, that child isn't even manga canon. He also didn't pick up anything from 1010 in terms of weapons usage. I'm talking about Metal Lee. But considering the fact that the Kwaku no Johei literally makes all 3 of these weapons irrelevant, there's also really no need for any of them to come back in the first place. Speaking of groups of weapons that mostly have no reason to come back, but a couple of them have some pretty compelling arguments, let's get to the second group of weapons that should make a return in Boruto, but probably never will. Next up, we're going to be talking about the 7 Swords of the Mist, which have essentially been all but forgotten by the Boruto timeline. See, yes, we get an entire arc about them in the anime, which is canonized by the light novels that make up the first 50 or so episodes of Boruto. The resolution of that arc is to put all of the swords back into storage, which is stupid. And listen, I get that the modern day Hidden Mist is irrelevant. Even more so now that they decided to kill the only relevant character from the Hidden Mist for the new gen, Kagura, in the anime for objectively no real reason. But if Ikimoto wanted to make the world of Boruto feel as large as the world of Naruto, and wanted to build some inroads in the accomplishment of that goal, reintroducing the 7 Swords of the Mist would be a fantastic way to accomplish that. See, Konoha and Team Boruto are currently scrambling to try and build up any semblance of a fighting force against Jura. And even presumably at the peak of their power, their chances of victory against Jura are still, according to Kashin Koji, just 1 in a million. And therefore, if the Hidden Mist wanted to be helpful, they could hand out the 7 Swords of the Mist to 7 Mist Shinobi, 7 faithful Mist Shinobi, ensuring that not only do these legendary swords not fall into the wrong hands, but also ensuring militarily that the Hidden Mist is still relevant. However, for some reason they wanted to stay dedicated to their role as an irrelevant tourist attraction, they could also lend out the 7 swords. Now listen, I get that the Hidden Mist in the Boruto era is trying to separate itself from its bloody past, and they're accomplishing this at least partly by putting away the bloody instruments of their past, which opens up the door to accomplishing what they actually want to accomplish in the new era, which is, like I said, becoming a tourist attraction. But the world is still constantly being endangered, and we are not using all of the tools that we could be to fight back. Now yes, I fully understand that there's a fair to decent chance that the Hidden Mist doesn't even know the Shinju exist, but there's also really no reason for them not to know. See, what we're seeing happening right now in Boruto is eerily similar to what we saw happening in the beginning of Shippuden, where the Akatsuki were established as a threat that threatened all of the villages and all of their Jinchuriki. There was no collaboration between villages in the battle against the Akatsuki until the 4th Great Shinobi World War. And right now, while it may seem as though the Shinju are truly only threatening Konoha, as all of the people that the Shinju are trying to consume, with the sole exception of Shinki, reside in Konoha, if the Shinju do all get what they want, there's a fair or decent chance that it could lead to just objectively the end of the world, which is what the Fourth Great Shinobi World War was being fought to prevent in the first place. And it's not like collaboration can't happen between villages. When Momoshiki was introduced in the first Momoshiki arc, all 5 of the current Kage walked through Sasuke's portal to fight against Momoshiki and Kinshiki. All 5 of the Kage worked together to battle against a planetary foe. So why isn't Shikamaru trying to involve the other villages in the battle against the Shinju? I mean, it's not like they don't know about it. Konoha literally went to the Hidden Sands to help them out in the battle against them. And I get it, the Hidden Sand has had their fighting force largely depleted now that Gaara and Shinki can't fight. Like, this is everyone's problem. Why are we all not working together? I mean, yeah, Chojuro still uses the split sword. We saw him using it in the battle against Kinshiki. But Boruto just had to use knowledge from the future to give to Sumire to reforge his broken Kusanagi blade that he took from Sasuke so that when he used it in future battles against Jura, it wouldn't break. You know what would have accomplished the exact same thing? Boruto using the Kiba blades. You know, the twin swords imbued with lightning? His element, by the way. Chakra, that are said to be the sharpest swords ever forged. Having trouble cutting through those pesky trees Jura keeps building? And not anymore. Let me introduce to you the electric machete. And mind you, this electric machete is always covered in chakra, lightning chakra, something that happens passively without input from the user. So you never have to worry about the chakra coating fading, not only ensuring it's always league-leading sharpness, but also ensuring that it never cracks. Now listen, I get it. Boruto's gotta be a Sasuke clone, and thus he can only use a blade in one of his hands, because his other hand needs to be free for doing one-handed hand seals. So a dual-bladed set wouldn't work for him. It's not like he couldn't throw one of them and jump to it using his flying Raijin, put one in his holster, stab one into the ground, or, you know, a myriad of other options. He could only use one blade at a time. And there's a lot more narrative weight in Boruto using Sasuke's sword. And by including Sumire as the researcher who was able to turn his Kusanagi blade into a real shinobi tech weapon, we not only make her more relevant in the story, but also progress her further as a potential love interest. But it's not just Boruto who could benefit from getting one of the 7 swords of the mist. Anyone could be made stronger by wielding either Samihada or the Kiba blades, which are, if we're being real, outside of the split swords, the only 2 swords that are worth bringing back from the 7 swords of the mist. I don't think we need the helmet splitter, the executioner sword, the one that's just a sewing needle, or the one that's just explosive tags. I mean, think about it. The main antagonist of TBV, Jura, is a guy with seemingly infinite chakra and infinite defense. So how do we deal with that kind of threat? Well, either with swords that can cut through the wood release of Jura, i.e. the Kiba blades, or a blade that could leech away enough of Jura's incredibly potent chakra to make him valuable. And if we're being real, in the case of Samihada, its lack of usage in Boruto is probably the most abhorrent thing we're going to talk about today, considering that the chakra stolen from any Shinju, not even just Jura, would be the incredibly potent power source of Earth's chakra, which is different from nature chakra, and therefore would grant Samihada and its wielder power equivalent to that of the Shinju. But also the fact that Samihada isn't being used by anybody in Boruto right now is especially egregious when you consider the fact, from a speed perspective, Jura's relatively mundane. Jura has been shown multiple times to be blitzable, and so long as one slash can be landed, well, chakra can start going to Samihada and its wielder, a case that gets substantially easier to argue if you consider all of Jura's wood release an extension of his body. And if that is the case, the argument of, oh, well, if he heals from the wounds inflicted on him, the chakra would stop leaking from him becomes irrelevant. Now, unfortunately, however, there is a real argument against the idea of injecting Samihada into the story of Boruto, and that's that Samihada is notoriously picky. Because even Naruto, with his abundant and unique chakra, was rejected by Samihada. And while Samihada allowed for Killer B to wield it, that was actually a ploy by Kisame to sneak into the Hidden Cloud. On top of this, the wielder of the strongest weapon from the Hidden Mist, not being somebody from the Hidden Mist, would kind of be a huge ask, especially if that guy was the person who supposedly killed Naruto. And unfortunately, Boruto, now that Kagura is gone, is really the only person in the new generation who uses Kenjutsu. Except, of course, for Oreya, who has shown already that he can bang with Shinju so long as he has the right weaponry. But I will admit that the idea of any of the 7 swords of the mist being re-injected into Boruto's story is at best a pipe dream. I mean, sure, it would be awesome and incredibly useful, but awesome and incredibly useful isn't really what Ikimoto is looking for so long as it includes things from Naruto. It's at least how I currently feel, but I'm curious to hear from you guys. If there's something from Naruto or somebody from Naruto that you would love to see make a useful reappearance in Boruto, what or who is it? Let me know in the comments below. And while I got you down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go look at some property.